Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a connect the dot, a mind-blown moment, a mushroom cloud moment, a new book to read, or a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links will be at the bottom of this video. Manly P. Hall. Secret Teachings of All Ages. Because your feelings. To some of you out there who think I'm otherwise. Fishes, insects, animals, reptiles, and birds, part 2. Part 2. They did this like hieroglyphic font kind of thing. I'm just going to go with it. Its appropriate emblems of various human and divine attributes. Birds were included in religious and philosophic symbolism, that of pagans and of Christians alike. Cruelty was signified by buzzard, courage by the eagle, self-sacrifice by the pelican, and pride by the peacock. The ability of birds to leave the earth and fly aloft toward the source of light has resulted in their being associated with aspiration, purity, and beauty. Wings were therefore often added to various terrene creatures in an effort to suggest transcendency, because their habitat was among the branches of the sacred trees in the hearts of ancient forests. Birds, also regarded as appointed messengers of the tree spirits and nature gods dwelling in these consecrated groves, and through their clear notes, the gods themselves were said to speak. Many myths have been fabricated to explain the brilliant plumage of birds. A familiar example is the story of Juno's peacock, in whose tail feathers were placed the eyes of Argus. Numerous American Indian legends also deal with birds and the origin of various colors of feathers. The Navajos declared that when all living things climbed to the stalk of a bamboo to escape the flood, the wild turkey was on the lowest branch and his tail feathers trailed in the water, hence the color was all washed out. Gravitation, which is a law in the material world, is the impulse toward the center of materiality. Levitation, which is a law in the spiritual world, is the impulse towards the center of spirituality, seeming to be capable of neutralizing the effect of gravity. The bird was said to partake of a nature superior to other terrestrial creation, and its feathers, because of their sustaining power, came to be accepted as symbols of divinity, courage, and accomplishment. A notable example is the dignity attached to eagle feathers by the Native Americans, among whom they are insignia of merit. Angels have been invested with wings because, like birds, they were considered to be intermediaries between the gods and men, and to inhabit the air or middle kingdom betwixt heaven and earth. As the dome of the heavens was likened to a skull in the Gothic mysteries, so the birds which flew across the sky were regarded as thoughts of the deity. For this reason, Odin's two messenger ravens were called Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. My favorite two birds. Among the Greeks and Romans, the eagle was the appointed bird of Jupiter, and consequently signifying the swiftly moving forces of the demiurgus. Hence, it was looked upon as the mundane lord of the birds, in contradiction to the phoenix, which was symbolic of the celestial ruler. The eagle typified the sun in its material phase, and also the immutable demiurgic law beneath which all mortal creatures must bend. The eagle was also the hermetic symbol of sulfur and signified the mysterious fire of Scorpio. The most profound significant symbol of the zodiac and the gate of the great mystery. Being one of the three symbols of Scorpio, the eagle, like the goat Amendes, was an emblem of the theurgic art, and the secret processes by which the infernal fire of the scorpion was transmuted into the spiritual light fire of the gods. Among certain American Indian tribes, the thunderbird is held in peculiar esteem. This divine creature is said to live above the clouds. The flapping of its wings causes the rumbling which accompanies storms, while the flashes from its eyes are the lightning. Birds were used to signify the vital breath, and among the Egyptians, mysterious hawk-like birds with human heads and carrying in their claws the symbols of immortality are often shown hovering as emblems of the liberated soul over the mummified bodies of the dead. In Egypt, the hawk was the sacred symbol of the sun, and Ra, Osiris, and horns are often depicted with the heads of hawks. The cock, or rooster, was a symbol of Kashmala, Camillus, in the Samothracian mysteries, and is also a phallic symbol sacred to the sun. It was accepted by the Greeks as the emblem of Ares, Mars, and typified watchfulness and defense. When placed in the center of a weather vane, it signifies the sun in the midst of the four corners of creation. The Greeks sacrificed a rooster to the gods at the time of entering the Eleusinian mysteries. Sir Francis Bacon is supposed to have died as a result of stuffing a fowl with snow. May this not signify Bacon's initiation into the pagan mysteries which still exist in his day. Both the peacock and the ibis were objects of veneration because they destroyed the poisonous reptiles, which were popularly regarded as the emissaries of the infernal gods. Because of the maraud of eyes in its tail feathers, the peacock was accepted as a symbol of wisdom, and on account its general appearance, it was often confused with the fabled phoenix of the mysteries. There is a curious belief that the flesh of the peacock will not petrify, even though kept from a considerable time. As an outgrowth of this belief, the peacock became the emblem of immortality, because the spiritual nature of man, like the flesh of this bird, is incorruptible. The Egyptians paid divine honors to the ibis, and it was a cardinal crime to kill one, even by accident. It was asserted that the ibis could live only in Egypt, and that if it transported to a foreign country, it would die of grief. The Egyptians declared this bird to be the preserver of crops, and especially worthy of veneration because it drove out the winged serpents of Libya, which the wind blew into Egypt. The ibis was sacred to Thoth, and when its head and neck were tucked under its wings, its body closed, resembling a human heart. The black and white ibis was sacred to the moon, but all forms were revered because they destroyed crocodile eggs, the crocodile being the symbol of detest Typhon. Nocturnal birds were appropriate symbols of both sorcery and the secret divine sciences. Sorcery, because black magic cannot function in the light of truth, day, and is powerful only when surrounded by ignorance, night. And the divine sciences, because those possessing the arcana are able to see through the darkness of ignorance and materiality. Owls and bats were consequently often associated with either witchcraft or wisdom. The goose was an emblem of the first primitive substance or condition from which and within which the worlds were fashioned. In the mysteries, the universe was likened to an egg, with the cosmic goose had laid in space. Because of its blackness, the crow was a symbol of chaos or the chaotic darkness preceding the light of creation. The grace and purity of the swan was emblematic of the spiritual grace and purity of the initiate. This bird was also represented the mysteries, which unfolded these qualities in humanity. This explains the allegories of the gods, the secret wisdom incarnating in the body of a swan, the initiate. Being scavengers, the vulture, the buzzard, and the condor signified that form of divine power, which by disposing of refuse and other matter dangerous to the life and health of humanity, cleanses and purifies the lower spheres. These birds were therefore adopted as symbols of the disintegrative processes which accomplish good while apparently destroying, and by some religions have been mistakenly regarded as evil. Birds such as the parrot and raven were accorded veneration because, being able to mimic the human voice, they were looked upon as links between the human and the animal kingdoms. The dove, accepted by Christianity as the emblem of the Holy Ghost, is an extremely ancient and highly revered pagan yonic emblem. In many of the ancient mysteries, it represented the third person of the creative triad, or the fabricator of the world, as the lower worlds were brought into existence through a generative process. So the dove has been associated with those deities identified with the procreative functions. It is sacred to Astraea, Sybil, Isis, Venus, Juno, Mylitta, and Aphrodite. On account of the gentleness and devotion to its young, the dove was looked upon as the embodiment of the material instinct. The dove is also an emblem of wisdom, for it represents the power and order by which the lower worlds are maintained. It has long been accepted as a messenger of the divine will and signifies the activity of the god. The name dove has been given to the oracles and to prophets. The true name of the dove was Iona or Ionis. It was a very sacred emblem and at one time almost universally received. It was adopted by the Hebrews, and the mystic dove was regarded as a symbol from the days of Noah by all those who were of the Church of God. The prophet sent to Nineveh as God's messenger was called Jonah, or the dove. Our Lord's forerunner, the Baptist, was called the Greek by the name of Iones. And so was the apostle of love, the author of the fourth gospel of the apocalypse, named Iones. In Masonry, the dove is a symbol of purity and innocence. It is significant that in pagan mysteries, the dove of Venus was crucified upon the four spokes of a great wheel, thus foreshadowing the mystery of the crucified Lord of love. Although Muhammad drove the doves from the temple of Mecca, occasionally he depicted with a dove sitting on his shoulder as a symbol of divine inspiration. In ancient times, the effigies of doves were placed upon the heads of scepters to signify those bearing them were overshadowed by divine prerogative. In medieval art, the dove frequently was pictured as an emblem of divine benediction. The phoenix. This should be interesting. Clement, one of the ante-Nicene fathers, describes in the 1st century after Christ the peculiar nature and habits of the phoenix in this wise. Quote, there is a certain bird which is called a phoenix. There is the only one of its kind and lives 500 years. And when the time of its dissolution draws near, that it must die, it builds itself a nest of fragrant insects and myrrh and other spices, into which, when the time is fulfilled, and enter and dies. But as the flesh decays, a certain kind of worm is produced, which, being nourished by the juices of the dead bird, brings forth feathers. Then, when it has acquired strength, it takes up the nest, in which are the bones of its parent, and bearing these, it passes from the land of Arabia into Egypt to the city called Heliopolis. I don't think I'm saying that right. And in open day, flying in the sight of all men, it places them on the altar of the sun, and having done this, hastens back to its former abode. The priests then inspect the registers of the dates and find that it has returned exactly as the 500th year was completed, end quote. Although admitting that he had not seen the phoenix bird, there being only one alive at the time, Herodotus amplifies a bit of the description given by Clement. Quote, they tell a story of what this bird does, which does not seem to me to be credible. That he comes all the way from Arabia and brings the parent bird, all plastered with myrrh, to the temple of the sun, and there buries the body. In order to bring him, they say he first forms a ball of myrrh, as big as he finds that he can carry. Then he hollows out the ball and puts his parent inside, after which he covers up the opening with flesh, myrrh, and the bowl is then of exactly the same weight as at first. So he brings it to Egypt, plastered over, as I said, and deposits it in the temple of the sun. Such is the story they tell of the doings of this bird, end quote. Both Herodotus and Pliny noted the general resemblance in the shape between the phoenix and the eagle, a point which the reader should carefully consider for the reasonably certain that the modern Masonic eagle was originally a phoenix. The body of the phoenix is described as having been covered with glossy purple feathers, while its long tail feathers were alternately blue and red. Its head was light in color, and about its neck was a circlet of golden plumage. At the back of its head, the phoenix had a peculiar tuft or feathers, a fact quite evident, although it has been overlooked by the most writers and symbologists. The phoenix was regarded as sacred to the sun, and the length of its life, 500 to 1,000 years, was taken as a standard for measuring the motion of the heavenly bodies, and also the cycles of time used in the mysteries to designate the periods of existence. The diet of the bird was unknown. Some writers declared that it subsided upon the atmosphere, others that it ate at rare intervals, but never in the presence of man. Modern Masons should realize the special Masonic significance of the phoenix, for the bird is described as using sprigs of arcade. I can never say this word. Acacia in the manufacture of its nest. Not saying it right. The phoenix, which is the mythological Persian rock, is also the name of the southern constellation, and therefore it has both an astronomical and an astrological significance. In all probability, the phoenix was the swan of the Greeks, the eagle of the Romans, and the peacock of the Far East. To the ancient mystics, the phoenix was a most appropriate symbol of the immortality of the human soul. For just as the phoenix was reborn out of its own dead self 7 times 7, so again and again, the spiritual nature of man rises triumphant from his dead physical body. Medieval Hermeticists regarded the phoenix as a symbol of the accomplishment of alchemical transmutation, a process equivalent to the human regeneration. The name Phoenix, hi Morgan, was also given to one of the secret alchemical formulae. The familiar pelican of the rose crux degree, feeding its young from its own breast, is in reality a phoenix, a fact which can be confirmed by an examination of the head of the bird. The ungainly lower part of the pelican's beak is entirely missing, the head of the phoenix being far more like that of an eagle than of a pelican. In the mysteries, it was customary to refer to the initiates as phoenixes, or men who had been reborn again. For just as physical birth gives man consciousness in the physical world, so the neophyte, after 9 degrees in the womb of the mysteries, was born into a consciousness of the spiritual world. This is the mystery of initiation to which Christ referred when he said, quote, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God, end quote. The phoenix is a fitting symbol of this spiritual birth. Morgan Cat says hi. European mysticism was not dead at the time the United States of America was founded. The hand of the mysteries controlled in the establishment of the new government, for the signature of the mysteries may still be seen on the Great Seal of the United States of America. Careful analysis of the seal discloses a mass of occult and Masonic symbols. Chief among them, the so-called American eagle, a bird which Benjamin Franklin declared unworthy to be chosen as the emblem of a great, powerful, and progressive people. Here again, only the student of symbolism can see through the centrifuge and realize that the American eagle upon the Great Seal is but a conventionalized phoenix, a fact plainly discernible from an examination of the original seal. In his sketch of the history of the seal of the United States, Gillard Hunt unwittingly brings forward much material to substantiate the belief that the original seal carried the phoenix bird on its obverse surface and the Great Pyramid of Giza upon its reverse surface. In a colored sketch submitted as a design for the Great Seal by William Barton in 1782, an actual phoenix appears sitting on a nest of flames. This itself demonstrates a tendency towards the use of the emblematic bird. If anyone doubts the presence of Masonic and occult influences on the great time and the Great Seal was designed, he should give due consideration to the comments of Professor Charles Eliot Norton of Harvard, who wrote concerning the unfinished pyramid and the all-seeing eye, which adorn the reversal of the seal, as follows, quote, "The device adopted by Congress is practically incapable of effective treatment. It can hardly, however, artistically treated by designer, look otherwise than a dull emblem of Masonic fraternity." The history of the seal of the United States. The eagles of Napoleon and Caesar and the zodiacal eagle of Scorpio are really phoenixes. For the latter bird, not the eagle, is a symbol of spiritual victory and achievement. Masonry will be in a position to solve many of the secrets of its esoteric doctrine when it realizes that both its single and double-headed eagles are phoenixes, and that to all initiates and philosophers, the phoenix is a symbol of the transmutation and regeneration of the creative energy, commonly called the accomplishment of the great work. The double-headed phoenix is a prototype of an androgynous man, for according to the secret teachings, there will come a time when the human body will have two spinal cords, by means of which vibratory equilibrium will be maintained in the body. That's interesting. Not only were many of the founders of the United States government Masons, but they received aid from a secret and august body existing in Europe, which helped them to establish this country for a particular and peculiar purpose, known only to the initiated few. The Great Seal is a signature of this exalted body, unseen, for the most part unknown, and the unfinished pyramid upon its reverse side is the trestle board setting forth symmetrically the task to accomplish of which the United States government was dedicated from the day of its inception. Oh, there's so much I could say about all of that. Before I continue, I have a cat in my lap. Say hi, Mama. Say hi to everybody. My co-host is back. She's 88. 88. She's old lady. I don't know if you heard the squeaking involved, but there was squeaking and it was cute. So I had to bring her up to say hi. Animals. The lion is the king of the animal family, and, like the head of each kingdom, is sacred to the sun, whose rays are symbolized by the lion's shaggy mane. The allegories perpetuated by the mysteries, such as the one to the effect that the lion opens a secret book, signify that the solar power opens the seed pods, releasing the spiritual life within. There was also a curious belief among the ancients that the lion sleeps with his eyes open, and for this reason the animal was chosen as a symbol of vigilance. The figure of a lion placed on either side of doors and gateways is an emblem of divine guardianship. King Solomon was often symbolized as a lion. For ages, the feline family has been regarded with peculiar veneration. In several of the mysteries, most notably the Egyptian, the priests wore the skins of lions, tigers, panthers, pumas, or leopards. Hercules and Samson, both solar symbols, slew the lion of the constellation of Leo and robed themselves in his skin, thus signifying that they represented the sun itself when all the summit of the celestial arc. At Bubastis, sorry for all my Egyptian friends, in Egypt was a temple of the famous goddess Bastet, the cat deity of Ptolemy's. The Egyptians paid homage to the cat, especially when its fur was of 3 shades or its eyes of different colors. To the priests, the cat was symbolic of the magnetic forces of nature, and they surrounded themselves with these animals for the sake of the astral fire, which emanated from their bodies. The cat was also a symbol of eternity, for when it sleeps, it curls up into a ball with its head and tail touching. Among the Greeks and Latins, the cat was sacred for the goddess Diana. The Buddhists of India invested the cat with special significance, but for a different reason. The cat was the only animal absent at the death of the great Buddha because it had stopped on the way to chase a mouse. That the symbol of the lower astral forces should not be present at the liberation of Buddha is significant. Regarding the cat, Herodotus says, quote, "Whenever a fire breaks out, cats are agitated with a kind of divine motion, which that keep them observe, neglecting the fire. The cats, however, in spite of their care, break from them, leaping even over the herds and heads of their keepers to throw themselves into the fire. The Egyptians then make great mourning for their death. If a cat dies a natural death in a house, all they of the house shave their eyebrows." That is bizarre. If a dog, they shave the head and all the body. They use to emblem their dead cats and carry them to the Bubastis to be interred in a sacred house. Odd. The most important of all symbolic animals was the Apis, or Egyptian bull of Memphis, which was regarded as a sacred vehicle for the transmigration of the soul of the god Osiris. It was declared that Apis was conceived by a bolt of lightning, and the ceremony attendant upon its selection was consecrated was one of the most impressive in Egypt's ritualism. The Apis had to be marked in a certain manner. Herodotus states that the bull must be black with a square white spot on its forehead, the form of an eagle, probably a vulture, on his back, a beetle upon under his tongue, and the hair of his tail lying 2 ways. Other writers declared that the sacred bull was marked with 29 sacred symbols. His body was spotted, and upon his right side was a white mark in the form of a crescent. After its sanctification, the Apis was kept in a stable adjunctive to the temple and led to the processionals through the streets of the city upon certain solemn occasions. It was a popular belief among the Egyptians that any child upon whom the bull breathed would become illustrious. After reaching a certain age, 25 years, the apis was taken either to the River Nile or to the sacred fountain, authorities differ on this point, and drowned amidst the lamentations of the populace. The mourning and wailing for his death continued until the new apis was found, when it was declared that Osiris had reincarnated, whereupon rejoicing took the place of grief. The worship of the bull was not confined to Egypt. It is prevalent in many nations of the ancient world. In India, Nandi, the sacred white bull of Silva, is still the object of much veneration, and both the Persians and the Jews accepted the bull as an important religious symbol. The Assyrians, Phoenicians, Chaldeans, and even the Greeks reverenced for this animal, and Jupiter turned himself into a white bull to abduct Europa. The bull was powerful phallic emblem signifying the paternal creative power of the demiurgus. At his death, he was frequently mummified and buried with the pomp and dignity of a god in a specially prepared sarcophagus. Excavations in the Serapeum at Memphis had uncovered the tombs of more than 60 of these sacred animals. At the sign rising over the horizon, the vernal equinox constitutes the starry body of the annual incarnation of the sun. The bull not only was the celestial symbol of the solar man, but because the vernal equinox took place in the constellation of Taurus, it was called the breaker or opener of the year. For this reason, in astronomical symbolism, the bull is often showed breaking the annular egg with his horns. The apis further signifies the god mind in incarnation in the body of a beast, and therefore that the physical beast form is the sacred vehicle of divinity. Man's lower personality is the apis in which Osiris incarnates. The result of the combination is a creation of Serapis Bay. The material soul as a ruler of irrational material body and involved therein. After a certain period, which is determined by the square of 5 or 25 years, the body of Apis is destroyed and the soul liberated by the water which drowns the material life. This was indicative of the washing away of the material nature by the baptismal waters of divine light. In truth, the drowning of Apis is the symbol of death. The resurrection of Osiris in the new bull is a symbol of eternal renovation. The white bull was also symbolically sacred as the appointed emblem of initiates, signifying the spiritualized material bodies of both man and nature. When the vernal equinox no longer occurred in the sign of Taurus, the sun god incarnated in the constellation of Aries, and the ram then became the vehicle of the solar power. Thus, the sun rising in the sign of the celestial lamb triumphs over the symbolic serpent of darkness. The lamb is a familiar emblem of purity because of its gentleness and the whiteness of its wool. In many of the pagan mysteries, it is signified universal savior, and in Christianity is the favorite symbol of Christ. Early church paintings show a lamb standing upon a little hill, and from its feet pour 4 streams of living water, signifying the 4 Gospels. The blood of the lamb is the solar life pouring into the world through the sign of Aries. The goat is both a phallic symbol and also an emblem of courage or aspiration because of its short-footedness and ability to scale the loftiest peaks. To the alchemists, the goat's head was a symbol of sulfur. The heap the sins of mankind is merely an allegorical depiction of the Son Man who is the scapegoat of the world and upon whom are cast the sins of the 12 houses, tribes of the celestial universe. Truth is a divine lamb worshipped without pagandom, and slain for the sins of the world. And since the dawn of time, the savior gods of all religions have been personifications of the truth. The golden fleece sought by Jason and his Argonauts is a celestial lamb, the spiritual and intellectual sun. The secret doctrine is also typified by the golden fleece, the wool of the divine life, the rays of the sun of truth. Sudas declares the golden fleece to have been in reality a book written upon skin, which contained the formulae for the production of gold by means of chemistry. The mysteries were institutions erected for the transmutation of both ignorance into precious illumination. The dragon of ignorance was the terrible creature set to guard the golden fleece and represents the darkness of old year, which battles with the sun at the time of the equinoctial passage. Deer were sacred in the Bacchic mysteries of the Greeks. The Bacchians were often clothed in fawn skins. Deer were associated with the worship of the moon goddess, and the Bacchic orgies were usually conducted at night. The grace and speed of this animal cause it to be anticipated as a proper symbol of aesthetic abandon. Deer were objects of veneration with many nations. In Japan, herds of them are still maintained in connection with the temples. The wolf is usually associated with the principle of evil because of the mournful discordance of its howl and the viciousness of its nature. In Scandinavian mythology, Fenris, wolf, was one of the sons of Loki, the infernal god of the fires. With the temple of Asgard in flames about them, the gods, under the command of Odin, fought their last great battle against the chaotic forces of evil. With frothing jowls, Fenris, wolf, devoured Odin, the father of the gods, and this destroyed the Oninic universe. Here, the Fenris wolf represents those mindless powers of nature that overthrew the primitive creation. The unicorn, or monoceros, was a most curious creature of the ancient initiates. It is described by Thomas Bormann as a beast which, though doubted of many writers, yet is by others thus described. He has but one horn, and that an exceedingly rich one, growing out of the middle of his forehead. His head resembles an hart's, his feet an elephant's, his tail a boar's, and the rest of his body a horse. The horn is about 1.5 feet in length. His voice is like a lowing of an ox. His mane and hair are of yellowish color. His horn is as hard as iron and as rough as any file, twisted or curled, like a flaming sword, very straight, sharp, and everywhere black, expecting the point. Great virtues are attributed to its expelling poison and curling of several diseases. He's not a beast of prey. Interesting. While the unicorn is mentioned several times in scripture, no proof has yet been discovered of its existence. There are a number of drinking horns in various museums, presumably fashioned from its spike. It is reasonably certain, however, that these drinking vessels were really made either from the tusks of great large mammal or the horn of a rhinoceros. J.P. Lundy believes that the horn of the unicorn symbolizes the horn of salvation mentioned by St. Luke, which, pricking the hearts of men, turns them to a consideration of salvation through Christ. Medieval Christian mystics employ the unicorn as an emblem of Christ, and this creature must therefore signify the spiritual life in man. The single horn of the unicorn may represent the pineal gland, or third eye, which is a spiritual cognition center in the brain. The unicorn was adopted by the mysteries as a symbol of the illumined spiritual nature of the initiate, the horn which it defends itself, being the flaming sword of the spiritual doctrine against which nothing can prevail. In the book of Lambspring, a rare hermetic tract, appears an engraving showing a deer and a unicorn standing together in the wood. The picture is accompanied by the following text, quote, "The sages say truly that two animals are in the forest, one glorious, beautiful, and swift, a great and strong deer, the other a unicorn. If we apply the parable of our art, we shall call the forest the body. The unicorn will be the spirit at all times. The deer desires no other name but that of the soul. He knows that how to tame and master them by art, to couple them together and to lead them in and out of the forest may justly be called a master. End quote. The Egyptian devil, Typhon, was often symbolized by Set monster, whose identity is obscure. It has a queer snout-like nose and pointed ears. It may have been a conventional hyena. This Set monster lived in the sandstorms and wandered about the world promulgating evil. The Egyptians related the howling of the desert winds with the moaning cry of the hyena. Thus, when in the depths of the night the hyena sent forth its doleful wail, it sounded like the last despairing cry of a lost soul in the clutches of Typhon. Among the duties of evil creatures was that of protecting the Egyptian dead against grave robbers. Another symbol of Typhon was the hippopotamus, sacred to the god Mars because Mars was enthroned in the sign of Scorpio, the house of Typhon. The ass was also sacred to the Egyptian demon. Jesus riding into Jerusalem upon the back of an ass has the same significance as Hermes standing upon the prostrate form of Typhon. The early Christians were accused of worshiping the head of an ass, a most curious animal symbol of the hog or sow, sacred to Diana, and frequently employed in the mysteries as an emblem of the occult art. The wild boar, which Agord Attis, shows the use of the animal in the mysteries. According to the mysteries, the monkey represented the condition of man before the rational soul entered into his constitution. Therefore, it typifies the irrational man. By some of the monkey is looked upon as species not ensouled by the spiritual hierarchies, by others as a fallen state wherein man has been deprived of his divine nature through degeneracy. The ancients, through evolutionists, did not trace man's ascent through the monkey. The monkey they considered as having separated itself from the main stem of progress. The monkey was occasionally employed as a symbol of learning. Cynocephalus, the dog-headed ape, was the Egyptian hieroglyphic symbol of writing and was closely associated with Thoth. Cynocephalus is a symbol of the moon and Thoth of the planet Mercury. Because the ancient believed that the moon followed Mercury about the heavens, the dog ape was described as a faithful companion to Thoth. The dog, because of its faithfulness, denotes the relationship which should exist between the disciple and master, or between the initiate and his god. The shepherd dog was a type of this priestcraft. The dog's ability to sense and follow unseen persons for miles symbolized a transcendental power, by which the philosopher follows the thread of truth through the labyrinth of earthly error. The dog is also a symbol of Mercury. The dog star, Sirius, or Sulphus, was sacred to the Egyptians because of its prestige and the annual inundations of the Nile. As a beast of burden, the horse was the symbol of the body of man, forced to sustain the weight of the spiritual constitution. Conversely, it also typified the spiritual nature of man, forced to maintain the burden of the material personality. Chiron, the centaur, mentor of Achilles, represents the primitive creation which was the promulgator and instructor of mankind as described by Berosus. The winged horse and the magic carpet both symbolize the secret doctrine and the spiritualized body of man. The wooden horse of Troy, secreting an army for the capture of the city, represents man's body concealing within those infinite potentialities, which will later come forth and conquer his environment. Again, like Noah's Ark, it represents the spiritual nature of man as containing a host of latent potentialities would subsequently become active. The Siege of Troy is a symbolic account of the abduction of the human soul, Helena, by the personality Paris, and its final redemption through persevering struggle by the secret doctrine, the Greek army under the command of Agamemnon. And that ends part 2. I hope you all enjoy, because that was pretty spectacular, especially about the Phoenix Rising. There's a lot to say about America and its Masonic upbringings. I'm not here to denounce, denote, or persecute anybody who follows such principles. But it was inverted and taken over by not so kind typhonic things. If you enjoyed this reading, please don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. It helps me spread the knowledge to everybody around. And if, again, you get anything from my work, please consider supporting. It would be greatly appreciated, as this is my only method of doing anything as of current, still moving in. I carried 640 pounds, not equally, back and forward. My shed came. I mowed the grass today. Lots of housework yet to do. But until the next time, guys, sending you all protection, love, light, and shielding. Have a good one, guys. Until the next one. See ya.